The cybersecurity industry often sells a dream of instant success. Buy a tool, run a scan, collect a bounty. But newcomers quickly hit a very different reality, spending their weeks sorting through the exact same duplicate reports as everyone else. Standard automated scanners pull from the exact same public datasets and rely on the exact same vulnerability signatures. If you point off-the-shelf automation at a target, 1,000 other people already checked those identical endpoints yesterday. Successful hunters treat a target like a complex architecture, rather than a single website. They use a process called attack surface mapping to find the entry points that the automated crowd misses. This creates a core dilemma for every hunter: allocation. You only have so many hours in a week. How much time do you spend passively collecting data, actively poking at live servers, and manually reading code? If you want to get paid, you have to outmap the competition long before you attempt to outhack them. Every hunt starts at the exact same place: the target's total corporate footprint. This includes all their acquisitions, sister companies, and root domains. This funnel visualizes the process. At the top layer of public assets, you compete against 10,000 hunters. Digging into the third layer of hidden APIs drops the competition to hundreds. At the bottom tip of exploitable vulnerabilities, the competition drops to one: you. Securing a payout requires filtering out the massive noise at the top of the funnel so you can operate at the bottom, where the crowd thins out. Every reconnaissance technique requires an economic calculation, trading your personal time for the mathematical probability of a payout. We can map these decisions on this 2x2 chart, comparing your required effort against the unique impact of the findings. We start with Phase 1, passive reconnaissance. This involves querying third-party aggregators, like certificate transparency logs, to gather asset lists without ever alerting the target. Because automation handles the heavy lifting, it plots securely in the low-effort, low-impact quadrant. The data you get back is massive, but incredibly noisy. You have to spend secondary time resolving domains just to filter out the dead links. Once you have live IP addresses, you move to Phase 2, active recon. You directly probe those addresses for open ports and hidden directories, pushing this into the medium-effort, medium-impact section of our chart. This uncovers the low-hanging fruit. You will find exposed admin panels, default installs, and dead DNS records pointing to vulnerable third-party services. But active probing is loud. You leave distinct digital footprints, and aggressive scanning runs the risk of triggering firewalls or earning you an IP ban. Both passive and active recon are mandatory foundational steps. You have to do them. But because every single automated tool does them too, they'll reliably yield high-competition, low-reward findings. To find exclusive vulnerabilities, you have to transition out of automated scanning and into the manual phases of reconnaissance. Let's check our chart again. Downloading and manually parsing a target's front-end JavaScript bundles plots in the high-effort, high-impact quadrant. We do this to find shadow APIs, undocumented back-end pathways developers forgot to remove. Inside those minified code bundles, you are extracting technical specifics, unlisted API endpoints, experimental feature flags, or hard-coded authentication tokens. This process requires intense, sustained focus. You are sifting through tens of thousands of lines of messy, noisy data, looking for the specific logic flaw that justifies the days of research. The trade-off here is steep. It requires actual coding literacy to read minified code, and it demands massive amounts of your time. That steep barrier to entry drastically reduces your competition. Most hunters simply won't do it, which makes the massive time investment economically viable, even when you risk walking away with nothing. If you want to push your mapping to its absolute limit, you use the final and most intensive reconnaissance technique, advanced fuzzing. Looking at our chart one last time, advanced fuzzing sits at the extreme top right: high effort, extreme impact. Fuzzing works by systematically injecting custom word lists into URL paths, parameters, and HTTP headers. This brute force approach throws unexpected inputs at a server, forcing the application to reveal unlisted directories or backup files that were never meant for public access. But relying on generic lists won't work here. You have to build curated, context-specific word lists. You read a company's job postings to identify their exact tech stack, and you build your payloads around those specific technologies. The setup and analysis consume hours of your week, But this is the primary vector for uncovering deep logic flaws, like insecure direct object reference, or IDOR, where manipulating a single number gives you access to another user's private data. Advanced fuzzing exposes high-severity bugs, like deep logic errors that standard scanners simply cannot see. Now, you cannot skip steps. Advanced fuzzing is entirely useless if you aim it at the wrong subdomain. Let's look at this scorecard to see how different hunters map their targets. For a beginner or a part-time hunter, the optimal input strategy is building a tight, automated pipeline. You feed passive discovery data directly into basic active scanning. The outcome is that you will build foundational skills. The trade-off is that you have to accept a high volume of competition and the frustration of submitting duplicate reports. This path is a mandatory learning phase required to understand how corporate architecture actually functions. It is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Once you understand that architecture, your strategy has to shift to match the professional optimizers. A full-time pro dedicates roughly 80. This heavily skewed input strategy is what uncovers exclusive IDORs, shadow APIs, and the high-value logic flaws that pay the big bounties. To operate at this level, you have to abandon the quick dopamine hits of finding easy bugs. You have to accept long, quiet periods of finding absolutely nothing, knowing that the intense focus will eventually yield one rare, massive payout. Knowing exactly when to automate the busy work and when to dig deep into the code is the ROI equation. Mastering that balance is what separates frustrated novices from consistently profitable bug bounty hunters.